I have to go through a narrative to explain this because there are a lot of queries you have made. When I went to the States, I first went to Chicago and I knew Khan very well. So I used to go visit him. And there was always a discussion that after I finished, I would like to come back. That was the way I started. Then that was in 71, I think. And so I finished my studies. I worked in architecture firm, and then in 77 January, I called up Khan, told him that I'm going to go back to Bangladesh. He said the same thing that you were saying, don't go now, and instead why don't you, I'll send you a ticket. Why don't you come to for an interview with SOM, and then we'll hire you for the project architect of King Abdulaziz, University of King Abdulaziz, that SOM was designing at the moment. So I went there. First interview, there were 3 partners and Khan, and they asked me to go next day. I went next day. Next day after the interview, I called up Khan. I said, look, I have already bought a ticket. I am going to go back to Bangladesh. When I came back to start my practice, as you know, for architecture, it's not just the designing part, the conceptual part. You need to implement the project as you have conceived it. So I realized that I need to learn, because when I was working in the States, I worked for 3 years for different firms. I was basically involved in designing one. But architecture is not only designing. You have to make the construction drawing package. You have to select a contractor, suitable contractor for the work. You have to design and detail in such a way that your concept is reflected on that. So that was the story of my coming back. I wanted to come back always.
Could you please enlighten the overall scenario of architectural practice and education in Bangladesh during your early years of practice? Especially 1970s to 1980s, perhaps we had only one architecture school in the country and a few graduates. If you could please share something from your early memories.
Early memories of the time was, as I said, architectural firms were not too many pure architecture firms. Some of the architecture firms are doing engineering consultancy, but I wasn't equipped to do that. I didn't have a small office on primarily for architecture work. So when I came back in 77, the most of the works, 77 was the beginning of architecture project.
Yes, sir.
74 to 77, all the work that people, the firms are doing, are mostly engineering projects because of reconstruction, rebuilding, roads, waterways. So there was a lot of engineering consultancy.
Yes, sir.
And 77 is the beginning when some of the architecture work started coming out. But also these are majority of them were World Bank projects. And I was having a very small firm. I was not even qualified to apply for the World Bank project. And we started virtually with no work. I got a project which is Abu Said Chaudhry's house in Gulshan. And I frankly told the owner that, look, I'm setting up an office. If you can give me an advance of 20,000, I can rent a place and start. And then he said, okay. So that's how it started. The scene was, in architectural scene was not very rosy, I must say. Actually, I would like to go back to my experience in the States. America, the architectural scene is not rosy either, because it's very difficult for someone like me who is from a different culture. Because at that time, architecture was primarily a cultural product. It gradually changed now to various other ways of doing architecture. So unless you belong to that culture, people are not very sure whether they would like to give you a project. So it is not very rosy in the US either. So, but that was the reason I left. You can always make a living in that country doing working for other architects. But so I came back and started. The time was in '78. I was thinking, can I continue as an architect? It's not feasible. I even thought of doing business and talked to a few friends who were doing business.
It was such a difficult time.
It was a difficult time. It was a difficult time. Besides, I have rented a space. I am, invested money in drafting section and this and that. It was actually in '79 where we competed for BCIC project. That's the building over there. BCIC high-rise, 20-story building. And we got the first prize. That is the beginning. If I didn't get a job, probably I would be an architect today, do something else. So that is, from then on, then one day I got a surprise call from Ali Junisbani. He said, I know your father-in-law, he was telling me you were an architect. And we have started a housing project as a developer. Would you be interested to work? And I worked with them for many years, from '78 to '85 almost. Designed many projects for the Hispanis. And then on it was not rosy, but it was good. Because you have to remember, in architecture, there is a time when you get a new job, you start getting paid. But if you do not get another job within a year or so, then you are basically spending the remainder of the fee paying salary. And I started with a large office. It eventually became very large. There were 8 draftsmen in this room. Then about 6 architects working there. There was engineering section, this and that. The salary structure was very high. In mid-90s, I think, I felt that I shouldn't manage such a huge office. Why don't I go on a studio concept of doing architecture? So, but because I came back from the States, I have all the facilities for people who work. Like every 1 month salary is there. When he goes or he's asked to leave, he have to pay money. I realized that I have to pay each and every individual close to 100,000, 150,000 takas. So I cannot just ask them to leave immediately. As in when I had the money, I paid the individual, asked the person to leave. And subsequently, as you have seen now, I have a studio. And I find this system of doing architectural practice, farming out to experts, is more economically viable.
Since 1977, you are almost 39 years in practice. You have been commissioned with a wide range of projects. You have designed significant projects including housing, offices, schools, cyclone shelters, community halls, or so else. Were there any particular influence early in your career?
There are always remnants of influence. I cannot particularly identify any particular influence. As I was earlier saying, when I came back, I started designing. I realized I worked in the States. I have some experience which is of a different nature because I work in a different economy, different culture. I started thinking, if the design I do has to be place-based, what should I do? The first thing I started doing is reading up on the ancient history of this part of the country and seeing pictures of buildings, older buildings in Pathan period, Mughal period and British period. As a matter of fact, when once I started a cell, hired 4 architects for that, to document buildings, primarily photograph and plan if possible, of the British period architecture, the district headquarters. Subsequently, for funds, etc., I couldn't do it. I couldn't proceed with that. And so what I did at that point was to go around and see what is there that I can fall back on. I saw several common things, like the material use from Pathan to English period is brick, because it's easily available, it is locally procurable, so this is all brick building. And the technology is almost similar. And I decided probably this is my starting point. Brick as a material, use the conventional technology that is available. When I was doing the Bashirul House, the picture is here. I know that that building, I will not be able to go there and for visits and see. So I had to find a suitable mason to take in charge of this project. And I also have to think that the technology that I have to use has to be local, because I cannot send people from Dhaka all the time. So that's how Bashirul House was implemented on a similar concept. And the Bashirul House on a similar concept. And subsequently I did many projects using the local material, local technology. And I developed a kind of a style of doing it. I felt that I know brick better now with the years, how to use it and what would be the kind of expression the brick demands. And so I gradually developed what you can say a style which you can say is local. Like climatic reason, you need the windows to be recessed. And the brick is almost like brick is a solid wall and there are punches in it. It has a sculptural quality about it. So this is what I had done. But you mentioned other buildings. Now you have to, as an architect, as a designer, you have to work with all. You see, we make a mistake. All areas in Bangladesh are not similar in terms of local technology available, even in terms of microclimate. Because Chittagong coastal belt buildings require a different climate of different orientation when you're designing a building. And so I had an experience of designing in the coastal belt. I had an experience of designing in the North Bengal, and I found that North Bengal is interesting because the most exciting architecture I have seen, old architecture, British architecture, is the railway buildings in the Rajpur. They're beautiful actually. So there was a continuous learning as a student of architecture. So that kind of went on and on.
Bangladesh has changed a lot. We have 29 architecture schools and a huge number of fresh architects today. We are now economically more capable than years before. What are some of the opportunities and challenges your office faces now?
With the changing economic scenario and changing needs of client, what I found there is the technological input is little more technologically input solution. It's not locally available, craftsmen and things like that. This one. The other one is my clients for last 3 years are all factory design. We have designed a shoe factory for Apex. We have designed garment factories. We have designed a tannery factory we're designing now. So our office at the moment is designing mostly factory building. This seems to be the economic has generated this kind of work.
Sir, it has been noted in several publications about your work as environment responsive architecture style. In the context and climate of Bangladesh, how you have addressed environmental responsiveness in your architectural style?
Environmental responsiveness in my case is probably more intuitive. It's more spiritual. It's not kind of directly involved with the technology of impact. Because I'm saying more spiritual because I'm dealing with the environment of nature. Nature, I feel that nature, one of the reasons that we are facing this problem is human beings' intervention into nature. From day one, we started plowing land. It's an intervention. We need houses, we built houses. It's an intervention. So I felt that you have to kind of intervene in nature as little as possible. If it is a contour, you are designing a building, don't disturb the contour. Try to build it within that contour. So my responsiveness to environmental friendly architecture is primarily in terms of on the spiritual side. How to my interest in looking at green, a tree, a flower is very intensive. So I am dealing with that. Maybe the broader aspect of intervention impact is little outside the control of architects because but architects is involved because as you know building industry requires 50% of the power.
Yes, sir.
So there is involvement. So how do architects respond to that? Now this response, because we are not the prime generator of technology, Bangladesh is a poor country. This response is on the basis of the development that is happening in other countries. Now this technology at present is expensive. Like if I want to design a house, for example, all with solar energy, my expenses would be very high if I design it on the basis of 5 kilowatt use of power. In other countries like USA, what they have done is if you have used solar energy, you had a huge tax break and things of that sort. You were encouraged to do it. You benefit from it. We don't have any of this thing.
Currently, probably we are making some of the changes.
It will come about. It will come about. So my responsiveness to environment is primarily in terms of least intervention, in terms of my respect of environment and green areas, actually, and orientation in terms of, because you see the sun is giving us power. Sun is also generating our life in the sense of its other energy. And wind can give us comfort. So why not to utilize those in lieu of using mechanical means of doing it? So that should be minimal, I suppose. Like a fan, you probably need a fan. But do you need to air condition the space? Can it be made comfortable without spending so much money? As you know, in one 20-story building, an office building or whatever, the power need is close to 2 megawatt. Can you imagine? And 2 megawatt requirement in the sense of connection. They got a connection to 2 megawatt, and it's probably they are using 80% of that. Otherwise, why would they get connection of 2 megawatt? When I was growing up, I was told that Kumilla city had a generator generating something like 100 kilowatt or something. Ridiculous, nothing. One building requires 2 megawatt. So things are changing, our needs are changing. That's the reason environment from the technical point of view, environmentally friendly in true sense of the word, we have to get it. As a matter of fact, my advice to architects who are just beginning, who are students of architecture, their involvement should be, they have to create a new kind of architecture which is evolved out of purely both natural environmental requirement and also the technical side of environmental requirement. To give you an example, there is a problem here. I thought I was thinking of harvesting rainwater for a project. It's only 6 apartments or something. I found that the cost of doing it, I told him, this is how much it's going to cost you. He said, do you know that I can pay my water bill for 40 years with this money? Why do I need to invest this now? So government intervention is required. Maybe water bill should be such that people would be forced to harvest rainwater, because we have a lot of rain in this country. It can be easily harvested. And so sun can be utilized. The energy is huge. So, but technology has to be developed locally so that it is made cheaper and it can be made available to users. But in that, in the sense that if you make a cavity wall, it not only keeps the inner side of the building dry, it also reduces the inside temperature. Substantially. So I have been designing with cavity wall.
Yes, sir. I have seen a lot of examples.
And cavity wall, I have to tell you a story of cavity wall. When I was designing the American School addition, back in 84, 85, I was scared that if their building starts leaking and the paint starts spilling, they will haunt me to the end of the earth. So how do I solve this? And that is the first building I did with cavity wall. I did some study and realized that this is probably one way. But cavity wall is also has to be very carefully constructed with weepholes and air circulation, and don't clog the weephole. If you have a weephole and it's clogged, it's not going to ventilate properly. And so these are low technology, but this has to be given a lot of thoughts. Also low technology in terms of a brick wall. You know, many brick walls are built to save money. You would see the mason. These are all, no, they are not old masons. These are masons which just fresh, learned from the ustad. There is a way, the contractors would do it. They put the mortar 5, 6, 7, 8 feet and then start putting the brick. The result is gaps. There is a gap created. You put mortars for one brick, fix the brick properly, then the next brick. And if you do that, like look at this building, you will minimize the seepage inside substantially. So these are small technologies, minor technologies that has to be learned by architects. Because if you really calculate, it's a matter of calculation. If you really calculate and can convince the contractor that it's going to value add to his project, the developer, he would do it. For example, when we were doing the adjacent housing, the Dhanchiri is on a main road, busy main road. We left from the boundary wall, the building starts after 48 feet, 47 feet. No developer would agree to it. But I convinced him that if you do it, how do you want to value it? You invest 100, you want to make 150. So I'll show you the calculation. You are still making 150. What's your problem? Okay. So you need some convincing. If you believe that what you are doing is right for the project.
Also, it has been mentioned about your works holding cultural roots, respecting local context. In the projects of urban context, like the buildings you have designed in Dhaka, how you have translated the cultural roots and local context?
You probably obviously are making reference to office buildings, high-rise buildings. Because in our culture, there is no similarity of this kind of form. It's very difficult to kind of get ideas from those. So when you are designing a high-rise building, when I am designing a high-rise building, my primary concern is orientation, and because office building requires a lot of light. One of the reasons people want light is kind of glass, more glass actually. Is glass somehow seem to signify modernity. There is it's a mistaken idea, but lot of clients, corporate clients, they are very happy when they see a glass building. When I was asked to design Midas, they said, we want a glass building. So I said, I don't give glass on the east and west side. I can give glass on the north and south. Would you accept it? He said, show design and show us. So we have seen Midas building. Yes. East and west wall is a concrete wall, and north and south is a more glass. I probably wouldn't have done that either, but I felt that if I need to do the work, I have to make the client happy. So that's the compromise. And I don't think in our culture, and considering the environmental impact, global environmental impact, where energy was used, is really creating havoc. So we have to be very careful when you're designing a big 20-25 story building and centrally air condition it. Air conditioning demand is primarily because when people are working with peppers and this and that, open a window, they just get flown away, especially in 12, 13 stories high, at that height. So to create an environment of air conditioning, but not make a west glass facade and increase the load significantly. And these are the things you have to be careful. Water use in a building, power, air conditioning. Air conditioning, another thing is, we are toying with the idea that if you air condition a space for an hour, then you stop the chiller and just have the fan blowing air inside. We couldn't get around to the client to do it, but I don't even know how feasible it is in a closed space. So that's that. Now you asked me a question about cultural roots and other things. Cultural roots I could only kind of interpret in buildings which are scale related to the existing building that we see in our culture. The scale difference, I don't see any reference. I can't find any reference for that. So that was the problem. Related to our own culture. That was a problem that I was continuously facing. One could say I could do a kind of facade work around cultural elements, but that I don't think would be architecture. In our country, the architects primarily work around a plot of land, and if there is a bigger plot, client would like to build 2 acres on the ground floor. So it's kind of the complete asinine situation where now I think the Raju new regulation of leaving 50% will improve Dhaka city substantially. But I have been designing without this regulation. I've always maintained more than 50% open area whenever I designed. So that I have done. Now of course Raju is asking us to do it, which is a good idea. But your question is really like, in New York, there are some recent buildings. And if you allow pedestrians to go through your building and rest in the ground level at your building, you get a more far. আমাদের যে ফার আছে তুমি অনেক বেনিফিট পাচ্ছ, ট্যাক্স বেনিফিট পাবে. So there are some architects who have incorporated that. People walk through there. Because there is no, the belongingness of land is not so strong like ours. We build a wall around it to, claim this land is ours. In America, they don't have walls, so people can go through buildings and things like that. I feel that I can blandly say that architecture is translation of the architecture program. It's not as simple as that. Architecture is created, a design is created by architects who are good designers. more from kind of, it's an intuitive thing, as if the designer has the ability to go and travel in his unconscious, where all the information lies, where all your experiences are hidden there. Unless you are able to go to your unconscious, it's difficult to kind of design something which is that spirit of something that you stand in front of it, you realize that, oh, I like it. How does it come about? It come about, for example, in Dhanchiri, I was walking outside. The three villagers were looking at the building. They were discussing, Achha, এটা তো একটা জমিদার বাড়ির মতো ডিজাইন হচ্ছে. His memory has evolved. It's not that I realized that this memory that has evolved in him. When I was designing, was I able to travel to my unconscious to gather this similar experience of my childhood? Because if you're raised in a village, you see only building is probably the building of the landlord. Otherwise it's all huts, thatched or corrugated sheet or whatever. So that's the memory you build. And I was thinking of memory, how it's used. If you have seen the Spani buildings in Mau Bazar, there is a border made with brick. Recently, as a child, I was growing up with my grandfather. So when we have to walk 2.5 miles to a railway station, go to Ground Warrior City. Recently, I had a chance to go there. I found exactly the detail that was in my unconscious, the brick detail of core building on the roof. Then I realized I've done the similar things, but it happened because, for engineering reason. When you cast a slab and brick is your primary support material, slab once you take the shuttering out, it sags a little. There is a sagging, however small it is. When it sags, that thing goes a little higher, the edge of the slab. For water to enter inside, you don't need big gaps. You need very small gap. So that's where the water would penetrate and come inside the wall and it would get done. But if you can break the water by corbelling, this is your roof. Above the roof you have corbel. The rainwater gets broken down. It doesn't go in a sheet. So it doesn't have a chance to travel back into the world. So this is the things in designing. I don't know how you develop this ability to journey to your unconscious. Children can do it. Very small child. If you give them paints and brush, they draw from their unconscious. What is hidden, what is there inside them, because they haven't seen any painting as yet. They have seen nothing. They only know their unconscious and the memory that is collected in there. So that is important. I think the way an architect can develop it is through observation, through reading, and through reading of serious books, philosophy, wood literature, critical writing on architecture. This will give you a sense. Every time we read, we store them in our memory. Everything is not in your brain maybe. It is in their brain, but you cannot recall it. How do you recall it? To recall it, you have to travel to the unconscious. It's like a computer. Computer একবার crash করে গেলে, the information is there, but you have to recover it. How do you do it? There is a technology, of course. Can you, human being, develop the similar technology of recalling their memories of past? This is important for us. He also designed a church. I'm amazed at the simplicity of thinking, of implementation, and yet rooted to his surrounding, to his culture. And it's evocative of things like that. So in short, what I found in my experience of doing things is you have to remain simple in your thought process, simple in terms of simplicity of creating a building form, simple in terms of finishing, but at the same time, your finishing is the only thing that is reflective of your root, of your culture. So how do you finish the building?
As we know, you have designed a number of housing projects in Dhaka. For example, Romna Apartment Complex, Century Apartment Complex, Lakeview Apartment Complex, Shegun Bagicha Apartment Complex, and a lot others. In 21st century, to your opinion, what should be the characteristics of housing projects or apartment complex in Dhaka?
This is probably the most valid question for us at the moment because of several things. One is land shortage. The other one is the question of affordability. Affordability to make housing available to a large number of people, and land price. I think time has come to think about housing for middle class clientele, those who cannot spend millions in buying an apartment. So I think the number of things has to be done. One is architectural responsibility is to make the housing as inexpensive construction-wise, and there is a need for government intervention, which was done in Singapore. Government intervention in the sense that, well, you have money, lots of it, you buy this at this price. We're going to make housing for people who can afford this. Their land price is going to be much lower because it's, at the end of the day, it's the land price which takes out the major chunk out of housing, construction cost, and then our buyer's requirement. We unfortunately have large families. We still have servants to help us. So they live in-house servants. So all these things, how do you manage? Like if you want to have servants, obviously you cannot afford to give them in-house servants, giving them residence is not possible. You have to learn to live in smaller area, which you don't need to spend so much money to build. We have to think of finishing with materials which are lasting but not very expensive. All these things has to be taken care of so that you can deliver the housing to all class of people, considering their affordability point. And so this is an area which I think we have to give a lot of looking at. I used to design, these are the examples you gave. I stopped designing housing quite some time back. I think for last 18 years, I haven't done any housing. It's all before that. I haven't done housing because I thought that if I give a proposal to a person, he will not probably take it. Because from the it's now dictated by the real estate developer. This should be dictated by regulation, architectural solution, and bank facilities, government intervention. Then only you can afford housing. Otherwise, you want to buy an apartment now. Because I've seen when I was designing for Hispanis, one day I was sitting in his room. The guy came with a sack full of cash, paid it. How many people can do that? I can afford to pay maybe 3,000 taka a month, 5,000 taka a month, 10,000 taka a month. What can I buy with that kind of affordability? It has to be worked out. That I think time is coming, then we have to think of high-rise apartment. There's not too much land. High-rise apartment, the only problem is the maintenance cost is very high. Which class of people can afford it in Bangladesh? Again, you are going for upper middle class, rich people. They can afford it. So if I am designing housing for government workers, let's say, should I build high-rise? Can they maintain a lift? Because this was a problem that America still faces in hard HUD housing, housing and urban development, that's housing for poor people. They're facing this problem that they build houses, high-rise houses. They find that the lift is impossible to keep the lift going. Because the kids will come, press it, go, press it, come back, press it. The users have to know that how to use these equipments. This is very important.
What advice would you give to young architects starting out today?
One thing that architects, the moment one decides to become an architect, if the person is materialistic, this is not the profession. Because you graduate, you will find that most architectural students are as smart as other students who do their business studies, engineering and things like that. They find that their friend who has done business studies, his starting salary is something which is twice your salary. A. B is, you study architecture because one day you would like to design. That situation can only come for which you need patience. You need to develop yourself as a competent, creative architect.